Okay, good morning, everyone. Let's see. Announcements first. Please do not forget to use your email when you send emails to me or to the TAs, please. Also, please, your emails, email etiquette, among others. Please, when you send an email asking for something, let us know who you are, which course or sections you are, and which activity are you asking for. So it's like, I want to review my grade. Okay, your grade in what, and so on. That could be useful. So please do not forget to put this in your emails. It doesn't matter if you send the email to me or to the TA, but remember, if it's something about your grades and something about exercises, labs, quizzes, your first point of contact should be the TA, because he is the one working with the graders and they are the ones that know what could be happening with your activities and your grade. Good. So exercise 2 is open at the end of the lecture. So when the lecture finish, you are going to have new links on Canvas. As usual, like the previous week, you're going to have activities to do the rest of the weeks. This week, you are going to review 2 videos. You are going to continue learning about diagrams. Just to give you some context, this week was about requirements. You review use cases and you review user stories. This week, you are going to continue with this. And when you need to provide details about a use case, something that you use is activity diagrams and state machine diagrams. So these 2, you are going to review videos about how to create them. And your exercise is basically to submit some examples of those kind of diagrams according with some problems that you have on Canvas. Good. So that is going to be your exercise this week. Moving forward, in the previous lecture. In the previous lecture, we review process. Question for your exam, what is a process? In the previous lecture, we review the activities that are involved in the software processes, requirements, design, implementation, testing, deployment. With those activities together as a process, we notice that there are some process models, a representation of how you can connect those activities, right? So you take the activities, you connect them. The graphical representation of how those activities are connected is this idea of process models. And we reviewed that there are basically 2 categories of process models, plan-based, and we move here in this direction. We review several examples of process models, all of them plan-based. Now, today, we're going to review the other path, the agile path. So plan-based, we review the Waterfall Model. Something that I need you to remember is this shape. Each color, a particular activity, all the activities connected in a line. Waterfall. So the idea is you finish with the requirements, and then you move to the design, and then you move to the coding and testing, and then you move to the deployment. You never go back to the previous one. So once you start with the design, you cannot go back to change requirements, or when you are programming or testing, well, you're going to continue until you finish. Waterfall model. Then we review the V model. V model is waterfall, but this idea of the V shape is basically to highlight the fact that we do a lot of testing. We review cases in which you need to do more testing than usual. Particularly, we talk human lives involved, medical devices could be a good idea for this one. Testing of everything. Big shape. We move forward with the incremental. The incremental was the first time that we have each of the activities like this one, the requirements. And instead of one block, what we have is this concept of split the activity in several chunks. So we can do a little bit of requirements, and with that, a little bit of planning, a little bit of design, program something, test on something, and we have this deployment of a beta version or some kind of previews of the final product. And we do that several times, as many times as needed. And what we have is an incremental model. We complete the project in small parts that are going to increase the size. Incremental model. This is important because today we're going to review Agile, and you're going to notice Agile is basically moving forward from this point to something new. Anyway, before moving to that, we review prototyping. Prototyping, the same activities, but all of them connected in a circle, is like an infinite loop of requirement, design, implementation, testing, delivery, new requirements, and so on. This, as we mentioned previously, a prototype is never a beta version. It's never part of a product that you are planning to deliver to someone else. It's just something that you do to learn something, proof of concept for something, garbage. We move to the last one, the spiral. And in this one, different from this one, different from the incremental, the key idea is this word, risk analysis. And something that we reviewed in the previous lecture was the difference between risk and bugs, risk analysis versus testing. Those two concepts in your exam, be sure that you review them and you understand them. For the spiral, risk analysis, something that we mentioned, is kind of 25% of the process. That is the only reason because we put this in this shape of a spiral to represent that the software development process is all of this, 75%, but there is something new that there is not related with the software activities, but risk analysis. And we talk about this being a good idea for mission critical systems. Good.
Professor, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Regarding the assignment due last night, if we were unable to finish it, would we submit it to the TA, or we just don't have any options for submitting late work?
We talk about that in the lecture one. There is no late submissions. Sorry. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay. So we review the spiral model, and that's it. So those are the models that so far we have reviewed, and you know the details. Next step, Agile. Key ideas with Agile. The key ideas with Agile receive a particular name, the Agile Manifesto. The Agile Manifesto established what is Agile for in terms of software. 1, 2, 3, 4 things that you need to remember. And why? Probably you're going to be doing a project as part of your next courses. Probably you're going to be doing a capstone project. Probably you're going to be developing software for something, working with a team. And the probabilities that you're going to be asked to work with the Agile process model are very high. Probably you're going to go to the industry and you're going to start working in some kind of software company. Probably the process model that you're going to be following is Agile. So important to remember the following 4 statements. Number one, the most important thing, the core idea with Agile is the people. The core idea with Agile is we want people to interact, to talk, to agree about how to do things, instead of having a process, instead of having this contract document, hard set of rules. The key idea with Agile and the idea of agility and adapting to changes and so on is because we are human beings. And the best thing that we can do to achieve a goal is to interact, to agree about how we are going to work. Individual interactions. Something that we're going to review later in the following slides. If you are working in an agile team, if you are working in an agile way, the key idea is every single day you talk with your team. It's not about having this long meeting, 1 hour or something like that, 5 minutes, but every single day you are in contact with your team. Second, the key goal for the Agile process is to complete the project, to deliver software, not documents. Give me a piece of software working, not the final version, but something, 10%, 20%, 50%, 70%. Give me a demo of a beta version or almost done the project, working. I don't care about you showing me all these fancy diagrams that are going to become the project in some point. It's not that the diagrams, the documents are not important, but it's more important that you show me the software working. Collaboration with the customer, with your client. Usually in plan-based, what you have is you sign a contract and the contract establishes what you're going to do, and then you go and work on that. For the Agile, usually there is not a contract as strict as you have it in other methodologies. What you have is your customer, the client, in close collaboration with you. A customer that is okay having meetings with you every 2 weeks. A customer that is available to answer your questions if you send an email. And that is the kind of customer that you're going to have, for instance, in a capstone project. That is the kind of customer, internal customer, that you're supposed to have in a company working with the Agile methodology. A customer that is there for you to answer questions, instead of a customer that gives you a list of requirements or a list of things that are expected to happen in a contract. Finally, the one that maybe you know the most, change. When you work with Agile, it's most important to say yes to anything that the customer wants to change instead of following a plan. You have a plan in Agile? Yes, you have a plan. There is always a plan because you're following a process. If you follow a process, you have a plan. But it is more important to say yes to the customer and adapt to changes than following in a strict way a plan that you define. A plan exists. Question in your exam, the plan exists. There is a plan, but always, 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 it is possible to change the plan. So the people is more important than the process. Working software is more important than the documentation. The customer collaboration is more important than a contract. And say yes accept the possibility of a change is more important than having a plan. There is a plan, there is documentation, you follow a process, and obviously there is a contract negotiation because, well, unless you are doing a school project, you're going to be paid for this. So payment is something that you're going to negotiate somehow. All of this exists, but all of this is more important than this. The red is more important than the blue, even though the blue exists. Now, things that are going to happen with the Agile. Number one, the people is important. The team is important. But the key idea with the people working with Agile is you are able to self-organize. You are a group of people doing a software project, and we, customers, stakeholders, we trust in you to be able to organize yourselves. This is not about having a boss and the boss telling you what to do. This is about you as a team being able to work together and accomplish the project. Something that you're going to notice happen is Agile is not for everyone. Agile is about having skills. Agile is about technical skills, yes, but also about communication skills. Being able to negotiate with your team, not only sit down and wait for orders from a boss. I am going to tell you about this in detail, but well, self-organize your team, work as a team, communication. You're going to work in an incremental way. Incremental way, if you remember, you're going to do something, and then that something again, and then that something again. These increments usually are going to be 2 weeks. You're going to be working requirement, design, implementation, testing, deliver a product, that activities, all the activities in a period of 2 weeks. But as a team, you can define what is going to be this time, how long are going to be these increments. Usually 2 weeks, I am going to give you the numbers later. In 2 weeks, you're going to move from a set of requirements to a final product. And then again and again until you finish the project. Every 2 weeks, you're going to be able to do 2 things. Number one, show the customer a beta version. Show the customer the result, what you achieve in those 2 weeks. Moreover, because every 2 weeks, you start again with new requirements. Every 2 weeks, you are able to apply changes. Think about it. You start working today, and you have 2 weeks to complete whatever you decide to complete today. You are not going to make any change in the next 2 weeks because you already start working, and you start working with whatever you decide today. But in 2 weeks, anything that I ask you to change from now to that deadline, in 2 weeks, in this point, you can apply the changes that the customer requires to you. So it's not like you can change anything in any moment. It's more about you can change anything here at this point, at the beginning of a new iteration, at the beginning of a new process. When you are defining what you are going to do in the next 2 weeks, in that point, you can change something. If you think about it, in a period of 1 month, there are 2 opportunities in which you can change the product. in which you can change or do something with your planning and with your requirements 2 times per month, assuming you are following these small iterations of 2 weeks. 2 times per month is good enough. It's better than Waterfall, in which you use months or several weeks in each of the activities. And by default, you are supposed to do not change anything. So Agile can be summarized with this idea of you can do changes, not in any moment, but several times per month. You have several opportunities, 2, maybe more, per month to update things. Good? Now, what is the difference of this versus Agile? Well, the important thing here is this versus this. In the plan base, number 1, you're going to work in the requirements, and usually you're going to work in the requirements a long period of time, maybe months. And then when you work in your requirements and you finish with understanding your requirements, you're going to create a document. That document, in some point, is going to become your contract. It's a list of things that you're going to do, and you're going to receive a payment for that. With that document, then you can start with the design and implementation. And obviously, that is going to be the beginning of testing and delivery also. And this is going to be months. A lot of time, a contract, a lot of time. What happened with Agile is this idea of requirements, planning. This is going to be days. If you want to work weeks, it's less than this. It's faster. It's Agile. And we really do not have this point here in which we're going to create a documentation. We have a documentation. In fact, something that you reviewed the previous week was these user stories and use case diagrams. Those are kind of our documents, but they are not a contract. They are not formal documentation. There is not something that the customer is going to sign, and there is not an official list of things that we're going to be paid for. It's just what we are going to use to remember what we're going to design and implement in the following 2 weeks. Again, days, weeks, a lot of time, a contract, Agile, days or weeks to understanding things, days or week to planning, and start working. One version, do this again, another version, do this again, and you can continue. And in some point, you're going to finish the product. Or one version of the product is going to be like your final version. That's it. Here, one product, and it should follow all the things here, the contract. If you follow everything, good. If not, you're not going to be paid, kind of. Plan-based, all of the plan-based that we review are here. The Agile, something like this. Now, what you are thinking is, what is the picture of the activities, requirements, planning, design, implementation, testing, delivery, if we start thinking about the Agile process model, the Agile methodology? Well, this work in the following way. And we're going to review the numbers, the people, and the arrows step by step. Because again, this is the process that you're supposed to follow in your project at the end of the semester, and also probably in other classes that you're going to take, like maybe a capstone project. Now, here, number one, we start with this idea that we have a team, and the team is people like you, the developers, and all the developers have the same hierarchical level. There is not a boss in an agile team. Number two, the customer, your client, is part of the team, is available to help the team to provide feedback. It's not someone that gives you the requirements and go. Again, capstone project, final project, your customer, your instructor, a professor in the university, even a company, but the company is more like your sponsor than your boss. So the company is there for giving you help and clarify questions. And if you are a group of students and you're working with your friends or with people that is in your class, your classmates, well, this idea that all of you are the same and there is no one experienced developer that is the boss of the team could work well, the team. Now, inside of the team, we're going to define roles, and I need you to remember these words. Inside of the team, there is going to be someone that is going to be called the product owner. Just like that, the product owner is one member of the team. It's not the boss, it's just one role, one assignment, one task that one member in the team is going to have. There is going to be another member of the team, the master. If you are following the Scrum flavor of Agile, the Scrum Master, the master basically. And there are going to be just the other people. So you are a team, you choose someone to be the product owner, and you choose someone to be the master. Again, there is no leadership here, all are the same. The master and the owner, even though the names are fancy, is just one people that is going to do something in the team, a specific task, whatever. The first thing that you do as a team with the customer, all of you, is to define what requirements you have at this moment, what requirements you have for your product. And all the requirements that you have, these user stories that you create the previous week, all these things that you read about user stories as something I want to, something because something, all those user stories, all the ones that you have for the product, you put them together, and what you're going to have is something that receives a fancy name, and the fancy name is product backlog. Product backlog, a collection of all the requirements that you have at this point for your product. And if I translate requirements to something that you did previous week, a collection of all the user stories that you have at this point for the product. Good. Everything got there. Now, the next step, from everything that you have here, from everything that you know about the product, you are going to take some of this, some of the user stories that you create, and you are going to decide which ones are the most important, which ones do you want to work in the following 2 weeks. Maybe these ones and these ones. Who is going to select which ones? You as a team with your customer. All the people involved have voice and is able to vote which are the user stories that we want to work on, that we want to create the next 2 weeks. Once you select those, the next step is to put those user stories in a particular place, and this particular place, this particular collection, this particular list is going to receive another fancy name, and it's going to be your sprint backlog. Did you notice? I have this product backlog that is the list of all the requirements that I know for the project. And then I am going to select what I am going to do the next 2 weeks, and I am going to put those in a sprint backlog. We're going to use fancy software, but you can think like I have an Excel spreadsheet with all the requirements, and then I select some of these, and I put the one that I select in another spreadsheet. That is oversimplifying things, but is what I am going to do from the project the next 2 weeks. After that, with whatever you put here, you start working. And all this loop here is this period of 2 weeks in which you are going to be working in the product. 2 weeks. Now, obviously, your goal is to complete everything that you put here. Because remember, your team, select those activities. So when you select those activities, it's because you are sure that your skills are the ones that are needed in order to complete all of this in 2 weeks. Your plan, your goal is to have all of this done the next 2 weeks. And you have the skills to complete that. Now, in order to be sure that that is happening, that you are finishing with everything, what you are going to do is every single day during the 2 weeks, every single day, 10 days, right? 5 days per week, you are going to have a meeting with your team. The meeting is going to be 5 to 10 minutes. Again, the goal is not to have a long meeting, breakfast and so on. 10 minutes. And in those 10 minutes, you are going to share, every single member of the team is going to share with everyone else the status of the project. You know what? From this set of tasks, I am doing 2, you are doing 3, someone else is doing 1 because it's very complex, whatever. Each of us is going to report to all the others. If the tasks that we are doing are going well, we are going to finish on time, or maybe we already finished some of them or not. The key idea is during the 2 weeks, every single day, the team, all the team know if the project is moving forward or not. When you think about, we have a meeting today, and this is your part, this is my part, and see you 1 day before the due date so we can put everything together. That is Waterfall, that is not Agile. Now, here, after the 2 weeks, what we have is a product that we can show, a product that should have all this specification working, because we are a great team and we accomplish all of this perfectly. Moreover, at this point, beside the product, something that we have is called a retrospective. A retrospective, yeah, we can talk about our experience working with our team. I can talk about, you know what, in 2 weeks, I love my team, or I maybe do not want to work with them anymore. What things go well working with this team, what things could be improved, and so on. Is, if you think about it, you have an experience to talk about it regarding your team, regarding the process. Besides, you have a product. 2 weeks, 10 minutes meetings, teams of 5 to 10 members. 5 to 10 members And one of those is going to be a product owner, and one of them is going to be a Scrum Master. And I am going to talk more about what they do. Now, usually you are going to have 7 maximum, but what they do is to put this 5 to 10, assuming that the people is going to stay with 7. There is a lot of documentation about why 7. In general, it's supposed that as a humans, we can have 7 things in our brain at the same time. So we can work with 7 people at the same time and still remember what we are doing with each of those 7. Psychology. Anyway, 5 to 10. For your capstone projects, for your final project, we're going to stay with 5. So the maximum size of your team is going to be 5. Things that I mentioned, removing some of the fancy things. Let's see. 3 important things that you need to do. The planning before everything else. This idea of meeting every single day during the next 2 weeks. And this idea of the retrospective. Your experience working with your team during the 2 weeks. Now, I am talking about these 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. Now, the period that you work, these 2 weeks, have a fancy name. We love the fancy names. The fancy name for that is going to be a sprint. You do a sprint. Yeah, you work 2 weeks. Okay, so I have a sprint planning. Yeah, you plan what are you going to do in 2 weeks. At the end of the sprint, at the end of those 2 weeks, you can tell me your retrospective, what happened with your team. And at the end of the sprint, you have a product that I can review and check how the project is moving forward. That is the reason because the sprint backlog is all the requirements, all these user stories that you are going to do in the next sprint. The sprint backlog, the things that you're going to do, the requirements that you're going to implement during the sprint. And the product backlog, everything that you have, all the requirements that you know. And remember, this is everything that you have. And from here, you're going to take something and you're going to put here, like a subset. And you have these guys, the master, the owner, and everyone else. Okay? So what about the people? The people, the owner. One person in your team, again, is not the boss. One person there, one human being, one like you, is going to be the responsible to kind of moderate the team. Keep the vision of the project. Keep thinking about the long term. Help with prioritized activities. Help the team to focus in what is the priority. What is the priority for the customer? What could be more important, A or B? Not for us, not what is the most difficult or the easy one, but which one could be better for us to show to the customer? Which one is going to make us look better? Is the one that is going to be thinking about when we finish this and this, we need to be worried always about these two in some point are going to connect. Is the integrity of the full thing, not only the individual things. Is the guy that is going to keep an eye in everyone else working as a team and not like individuals thinking only about I am done. This is what I do. The others can take care of everything else. I don't care. Check that. But again, it's not your boss. He's just a good guy in the team taking care of that thing, among others. Yes, I am going to move to the Burndown chart in 2 slides. Yeah, okay. So here, guys, the next element in the team that is relevant, the master. Again, I need to insist in this. It's not the boss, not the owner, not the master. There is no boss in the team. The master is the one that cares about the organization of the team. If this guy is checking about the product, if this guy is taking care that everything that happened is in the benefit of the product, in the benefit of the customer, this guy here is the one that is checking that really the people in the team is really working together. This is the guy that is going to try to be the leader. The leader is not the boss. The leader is the one that is going to try to make things happen, to put over the table suggestions about what can you do in order to enable the team to continue working together. But he do not have any authority. He do not have this, if you do not do that, I am going to give you 0 in the project, or I am going to make you fire. He's a leader, not a boss, and hopefully you get the idea. Is the one that is going to enforce the process in terms, again, everyone should be working together, everyone should be doing the best. If you're going to work in 1 requirement and another person is going to work in 2 requirements, well, 1 and 2 is because these 2 are half of the difficulty of 1. So it's like the work is still balanced, because remember, every single member in the team is supposed to have the same high standards in the skills. So it's not like, oh, well, he's the new one, he can work this, that is easy. Oh, his one is an older one, he can do these 3 because he has more experience. The thing doesn't work in that way. All are equally responsible, and well, someone needs to take care of that. Point that. The master, the people, the process, the product owner, the customer, the product. Just keep an eye on that during the meeting, during the planning. And someone needs to report about the team moving forward. And it's going to be this guy, and I am going to talk about the chart that we mentioned before in the chat. Now, for the people, everyone else, including these 2 guys, skills. And yes, technical skills are important, but guys, to be honest, the most important skill here, when we're working in this way, is communication. Having good developers is easy, quotation marks. Having people that is able to work together, that is a different challenge. When you go to an interview, yeah, maybe your interviewer is checking your skills, that you know how to program, that you know that the structures. Maybe you have 5 interviews with 5 different people and they are checking your knowledge. But also they are checking your skills for communication and your ability to work with others. Because believe me, this is more complicated than teaching someone how to use Java. Not exactly. All the team have the same skills. It's just we decide someone to keep an eye on this. But theoretically, at least, any member of the team can be the master. Well, I would say, guys, it's equally important. Think about this. You want to apply for Facebook, Google, Amazon, and I'm mentioning the big companies in the Silicon Valley. The first thing that you need to have is good technical skills, because the first thing that you're going to have is maybe a phone interview or maybe your CV or whatever. And what is in your CV and what is going to be your phone interview is going to be your technical skills. You need to show me that you are a good developer, that you have technical skills, and then I can invite you to the campus. And then I can invite you to in-person interview. You already show me that you have good skills. You need to show me those good skills again in the face-to-face interview. But also in the face-to-face interview, you need to show me that I want to work with you every single day, that I want to have you in my company, in the company every single day, that you are going to join the team and you're going to be an asset to the team, someone that everyone wants to work with and everyone is going to be happy and you are going to be happy, and not someone that maybe it's not going to be a good fit. And when I talk about good fit, in that point, we're talking about the soft skills. You need to show the company, your interviewers, all of them, that you have soft skills, yes. If you're talking about skills technical, remember, the idea here is you have good technical skills. You know design, you know programming, you know testing, you know the full process. And that is the reason because I am giving you one requirements and I am trusting in you to complete from the requirement to a piece of software, all the process. You are good with that. In the waterfall, the good designers work in the design, the good developers work in the developing, the good tester work with the testing. Here is more like you are a full developer. You can work in all the steps. You have good technical skills. That is a key idea for the Agile. And you have also a good set of soft skills, particularly communication and empathy with the people. You can work with someone else and you can make the product, the project, your project, and not only, okay, this is my part, that's it. Skills, empathy. Equal and authority, yes. Again, there is not a boss. There is no one person in the team that is going to tell you what to do. Think about it. You're working with a team in the school. There is no one that is going to be a boss in your classmates, right? Because no one is going to like that. Now, here, the decisions. Question in your exam, who take the decisions in Agile? And the most important thing here is the decisions. The product owner, no. The master, no. The customer, no. The team, everyone. The decisions are something that all the stakeholders, all the people involved is going to take, including the customer, including the master and the product owner. They are part of the team, but also including the developers, the people involved, participate in the decisions. Yeah, this is the example of democracy when you are developing software. Yeah, I agree with that. Now, you know what is the problem here? When we have waterfall, we have a contract, and the measure of the project is if we're moving forward in the contract, yes or no. With Agile, the measure of we're moving forward, yes or no, is not a contract, but we measure the moving forward every single day. There is more checking what is happening in an Agile project than in a Waterfall project. Why? Do you remember this plot? Something that I draw here in the background of my sprint is this picture with what is going to be called a Burndown chart. Another keyword that you need to remember with this. The Burndown chart. Yeah, do you remember that we have meetings every single day as a team, 10-minute meetings? Well, something that is going to happen in those meetings, and let me move. Because we're meeting every single day, then I can create this plot and I can be in the day 1, day 2, and so on. And assuming that you're going to be working, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but 2 weeks here. Every single day, the team is going to report to everyone else, and the product owner can create this kind of document plot. Guys, how many requirements we select from the product backlog and we put in the sprint backlog? I mean, how many requirements we plan to do this sprint? We select a total of 30. Okay, that is the beginning. Day 1, guys, how many requirements have you finished? I finished 1, someone else finished 1, someone else, nothing. Okay, day 1. We select to do 30. Day 1, we have done 28 as a team. Day 2, day 3, and so on. In every single moment during the sprint or at the end of the sprint, what we're going to have is the possibility of check the Burndown chart. We know how many requirements we think we can finish. The chart is going to be like, well, we're planning to work for 20 days or 10 or 15. I mean, again, the size of your sprint. And therefore, the logic is, well, we start with 30, and at the end of our sprint, the goal is we finish everything. So from 30 flat, align to 0, that is the plan. But obviously that is not going to happen, right? It's just a line. The only reason for the line is to be a reference, because then every single day, you as a team is going to report how many things you have accomplished. And obviously, when you report that you complete something, well, this line is going to move faster or slow, but in some point, you are going to achieve 0, maybe. This is the main report of moving forward that you are going to be showing or being able to show to the customer. And this is a chart that represents one sprint. Think about it. I can have a chart that day 1 to 15, if you work during the weekends, represent the first sprint, the first 30 tasks that you select, and then another one that represents the sprint 2, and as many tasks as you select for the sprint 2, and so on. And that is a graphical representation of what happened with your team. What happened with your team? Well, think about it. If I show you these Burndown charts, what do you think about those charts? What those charts are telling you about a particular team? Those are a very nice lines. Let's see. First case. There is a number of activities here. And well, the plan is to achieve 0, to complete all of them in this period of time, 1 sprint. Yes, thank you. The A is the classical example of procrastination. What does it mean? This team did nothing, do not accomplish anything. They start with these 20 activities and they have 20 activities there during 75% of the time. And in the last days, 25% of the time, they maybe start working. Yes. I mean, it's not going to be like this because you cannot accomplish something like 2.5 from an activity. There are always integer numbers. So they are going to be more like this. Right? But procrastination. If you have a flat line before the things start going down, it's a team that did not start work, that is not starting work when they should. Nothing is happening. Well, unless all the activities that you select to do, they are very, very hard activities, and therefore you are working very, very hard every 10% of the time, and you are unable to complete the activity, but in some point, everything go well and you start completing things. This is just something that make you like look careful to that team. It's not bad the first time, but it's like, let's see what happened the second time that these guys work together. Case B. What can you tell me about the B? There is also some kind of procrastination here. Yeah. Again, this is Agile. What happens if you do not complete something? Nothing, because basically you move that something to the next sprint. I mean, it's like we select this to do these 2 weeks. We didn't finish. Well, we can move this to the next week, right? This is always incremental process. But if I take a look to the Burndown chart and I notice this space here, basically it's telling me that for that particular period of time, you didn't finish. And again, in 1 sprint, no problem. I mean, maybe something was too hard to do, maybe anything could happen. But when you have a team, and usually that team do not complete the things, you can start thinking about replacing some members of your company. Like, these guys never accomplish things, never finish things. Yeah, the pattern become a problem. I agree. The last 2, and this is for you guys, students. If you are doing a capstone project or something like that, or if I ask you for the Burndown chart for your final project, and you do something like C or D, basically that means that you do not know what is a Burndown chart. Period. I mean, and believe me, I have received some Burndown chart like this. So that is the reason because I am sharing with you this. If you draw something like this, it's like this team have no idea about what to report in a Burndown chart. These 2 points, be careful. I mean, this is supposed to be day 0. This is supposed to represent how many things you put in your sprint backlog. So it's kind of weird that those 2 lines do not start in the same point. It's like, what could be the reason for drawing this here if you really have this in the day 0? Something is not like correct. It's like you tell me that you start with 20, but then here you tell me that in the day 0, I mean, you haven't started to work and you have, I don't know, 10. Like, how that happen? Again, it's day 0. It's your starting point. The 2 points are going to be together at the beginning. And this one, well, very, very important. The line is supposed to go down. Like if in the day 0, I have like 5 activities to do, why here in the day 10, I need to do 10? It's like, why the number of activities is increasing instead of decreasing? You do not modify the sprint backlog in the middle of the sprint. You take activities from the sprint backlog, you complete activities, work scenario, you do not complete activities, but increasing the activities is something that do not happen in the sprint. If you need to do more because you found bugs or something, you put that in your backlog for the next sprint, not for the current one. That is important. The straight line is just kind of your baseline. It's just to let you know kind of you are up or you are down, you are up. It's just a reference line, but it's an hypothetical line. It's not like you need to follow that one, right? It's the reference one and then the real one. The red one is the real one. The red one is the important one. The red one is the one that represents the team. The blue is just the hypothetical straight line connection between 2 points. Days in your sprint and the work that you accomplish. The work that you accomplish, 2 units. Number 1, it could be time, and I am going to talk about it. How many time you still need to complete the activity, because you know how many time do you need per activity, or the activities to do. Here, how do I calculate that? I need to go back. I need to go back, and I go back to the point in which you are. I need to do a product, and I give you requirements. Those requirements, you listen to me or you read the description like you did in the previous week, and then you document those requirements. You can document the requirements like in the diagrams. You did diagrams in the previous week, or you can create user stories. You create user stories in the previous week. As you notice, it doesn't matter which one you use. Each of these ovals here is equivalent to one of these cards. Each of the ovals is a requirement. Each of the cards, each of the user stories is one requirement. When you work with Agile, usually the people work with this option. User stories is kind of the Agile way to document requirements. The use case diagrams is kind of the plan-based process model way to work. There is no strict limitation about it, but it's usually what happens. You are working in Agile, therefore you are using user stories. User stories with this template as your role, I want the feature, so that whatever. One comment that I need to do here, guys, never, never, never. The user stories represent the requirements. The user stories represent what the customer wants. you do not use this as a developer. I want to program this. It's not about you. It's about the requirements that the customer is asking you to do. In the same way, when you work in your custom project, please, as a student, I want to program this because I want a good grade. That is not a user story. That is not the philosophy for this. You are doing a game, as a player, I want to. You are doing my SU, you are doing Canvas. As a student, I want to. As a professor, I want to. As a staff member, I want to. You are thinking about the user of that software, what the user wants, not what you need in order to get a grade or a payment. Remember that one. Yeah, exactly. The only way that you can put here, program this, is because maybe you are working in Eclipse or something like that. Then makes sense. The application is for programming something. But if that is not the scenario, this is not going to be. Okay, so use a big parenthesis for your caption. With this, when you have these requirements, all these user stories, what you're going to have is something like this. And you can put these small squares in Post-it, and you can have all your notes in kind of a whiteboard or something. And each of the small piece of paper represent one thing that you need to do for the project. The first thing that you're going to do at the beginning is meet with your team, meet with your customer, and for each of these things that you detect as a requirement for the product, you are going to review them, quantify them, and give a priority to each of them. So you know that you need, remember your homework, sell the book, contact the customer, and something else, and something else, and something else, and something else. All the things that you submit in your requirements, all those things in the whiteboard. With your team, for each of them, you're going to do quantification. Yes, tell me how many time, how many hours do you need to accomplish that? Because remember, if you are part of the team, you are a developer and you have skills. And therefore, one of the skills that you need to have is to be able to tell the people how many time do you need to accomplish something. Because each of these somethings is something very, very simple. Like, I want to register a user. Okay, in order to register a user, I need a web page where the user put the data, and I need a connection with a database to store the data. So how many times in hours do you need to create one HTML page, one backend software that receives the data and connect maybe with a database and store the data? How many hours do you need for that? For each of these activities, give me the time. Also, for each of those activities, working with the customer, tell me which ones have a priority. Is it more important to sell the book, or maybe it's important to contact the seller? Okay, selling the book is more important. Contacting the seller can wait for 2 weeks. Oh, register the users. It's important to register the user like the first week? Or we can start working with some users that we already have registered, and then the register for the user can wait for 1 month, 2 months. Tell me, which one is more important for you, customer? Priorities. I have 1 minute. Let me just finish here. So with the time and the priority, what you're going to do is to put things in your sprints. Obviously, sprint 1 is the next 2 weeks. Sprint 2 is the 2 weeks after that 2 weeks. For each sprint, this is like your product backlog, and this is a sprint backlog for each sprint. Obviously, the only one that is important is this, the sprint backlog of the immediate sprint. This is just something that is there for the future, because this can still change. You can add things, remove things, change the priorities, whatever. But this is what we are planning to do immediately for the next 2 weeks. Sprint backlog. You start with the one, you do the planning, you work, you create your Burndown chart so you can report your advance, you do testing, you do deployment, and that is the end of one sprint. You do retrospective, and then in some point, you can move to another, and another, and another, and that is the Agile methodology, period. Any question? This is the general picture, but as I mentioned before, you have several different flavors for Agile. You have Scrum, Kanban, Extreme Programming, and so on. I am not giving you the details of each of them, but in general, this is the big picture for all of them. This is kind of the template for them. Don't worry, we're going to talk more about requirements and how to create this and this. At this point, what you did in the previous week was just to learn about the template and the diagram, the elements in the diagram and what they represent. We need to have a lecture about the details, how to move from this point to a correct representation. What is a requirement? Which of these maybe should be 2 instead of 1? Which of these are not good requirements? We need to talk about it. Okay, guys, so you have homework. Please review Canvas. There is another exercise 2, to be submitted this week. And see you next week in the next lecture. And we're going to talk about requirements. Thank you.